Greetings, and thanks for your interest in the OpenRepeater project. This video is intended to be a quick overview of the process of setting up an OpenRepeater controller with the required hardware and software to go from nothing to basic operation. This guide is intended for users of all skill levels, but some basic Linux knowledge is a plus. It will not cover specifics of all setups, troubleshooting, and all the features of the user interface, as those are more in-depth topics for other videos and knowledge-based articles. If you need additional help afterwards, be sure to check out our knowledge base and forums at OpenRepeater.com. Let's get started. The first step before you can get started with OpenRepeater is that you'll need some kind of interface hardware to sit between the Raspberry Pi and the radios you intend to control. There are a number of options available, and you may even choose to build your own hardware interface. However, for the purposes of this tutorial, I am demonstrating with the Pi Repeater 2X, which is a fully assembled interface board available from ICS controllers. These steps may vary slightly based on your chosen hardware, but the principles are basically the same. You can visit our hardware page for more information on how to purchase this and other boards, as well as guidelines for homebrewing your own interface hardware. Start by carefully mounting the interface on top of your Raspberry Pi and align the connector properly with the 40-pin header, and take care not to damage the pins. Connect a network cable to the Ethernet port on the Raspberry Pi. This should be plugged into the same network as the computer you intend to access the OpenRepeater controller from. This network should also be enabled to issue dynamic IP addresses. Setting a static IP address or enabling the Wi-Fi is outside the scope of this tutorial. If you have not done so already, you will need to obtain the latest copy of the OpenRepeater software. Go to OpenRepeater.com and click on the download menu. Scroll down and find the most recent version of OpenRepeater and click on the link to start the download process. Be sure to double check that the image that you are downloading lists your board as supported by the image. The file that you will be downloading will be a zipped image of the Raspbian operating system along with all the OpenRepeater components pre-installed and ready to use. This step is entirely optional, but after you have successfully downloaded the image, you may wish to verify the checksum of the actual zip file and confirm that it matches the one listed on the download page of OpenRepeater.com. Since it is a large file, this will ensure that the file was not corrupt upon download or that you have received an altered image. If you are unsure how to do this and would like to do so, check our knowledge base for further instructions for your operating system. The actual image file that you will need to burn to the SD card is contained in the zip file. Most operating systems have a means to unzip these files. If not, you may need to download a third-party application. I am unzipping on a Mac, which is as simple as double-clicking on the zip file, after which the unzipped image file will appear. To properly burn the resulting image file on an SD card so that it is bootable by the Raspberry Pi, it is best to use a specialized program for this task. You can use a program such as Win32 Disk Imager for Windows or Apple Pi Baker for Mac, or a number of other programs. I am demonstrating using Apple Pi Baker, but the general process for Win32 Disk Imager is pretty much the same. First, insert your SD card into the computer's card reader and ensure that it is at least the required size or larger for the current version of OpenRepeater. Launch the burning application. Select the card that you wish to burn, then select the image file that you unzipped earlier. Then proceed to burn the image to the card. Please be patient as this process may take a while. When the process is complete, make sure that the card is properly ejected before removing it from the computer. The OpenRepeater image is intended to run headless, meaning without a monitor and keyboard. If you want, you can plug in a monitor via the HDMI port and connect a USB keyboard as an alternative to an SSH connection. Make sure that the SD card that you prepared is properly installed in the board's SD card socket. If you did not connect your Ethernet cable previously, you should connect the network cable to the Ethernet port on the board at this time. Again, your interface hardware should already be connected so that any hardware may be detected during boot up and selected during setup. If your interface requires USB sound, that should be plugged in as well. You do not need to have radios connected and turned on at this time. Connect the proper 5-volt DC power adapter with the appropriate current capacity required for your Raspberry Pi and accessories. Upon powering up the board, you should see the status lights flashing on the board as it boots. The activity of these lights is a good indication that the image is properly booting, especially since we are using the board headless. After you have booted, you will need to find out what your initial IP address is. The OpenRepeater image expects to be handed a dynamic IP address. There are a number of ways to accomplish this. You can look into the DHCP table of your router, or use a network scanning utility like Angry IP Scanner for Windows, Mac, and Linux. In the long term, it is advisable to set a static IP address in some manner. This will not be covered in this tutorial, but the simplest way of setting a static IP address will be mapping it to the MAC address of your Raspberry Pi's Ethernet adapter in your router if it supports this feature. Next, you will want to SSH into the Raspberry Pi using the IP address you just discovered. The default username is root, all lowercase, and the default password is OpenRepeater with a capital O and R. This guide assumes you are familiar with SSH. If not, be sure to check out the knowledge base on the site for more detailed information about using SSH. At the command prompt, type in raspi-config. First, go to Localization Options, then select Change Time Zone. For me, I'm going to select America, then New York for Eastern Time in the US. Then select OK to be taken back to the main menu. Next, select Advanced Options and choose Expand File System. At the next prompt, choose OK, then select Finish, then Yes to reboot. This will expand the file system to fill your SD card so that you can take advantage of all the space available on the card. After the system is rebooted, open your web browser and enter the IP address of your Raspberry Pi in the URL bar. You will likely get a security warning, however this is normal, and it's okay to proceed. This is because the SSL certificate used by the web server is self-signed and is not from a known certificate authority. Next, you'll be prompted to log in. The default username for the UI is admin, all lowercase, and the password is OpenRepeater, all lowercase. Since this is your first time logging in, and you have not yet set up a call sign and configured your interface, you will be prompted to start the setup wizard to get the basic settings configured. The first screen you will come to will have a preface, some general getting started requirements, as well as a warning. After you've read through this information and are ready to proceed, scroll to the bottom of the page and check the box that you understand and proceed to the next step. On the next screen, enter the call sign that will be used to identify the repeater. Only enter the call sign. When done, choose Continue. On the screen that follows, you'll be prompted to set up your hardware. You can simply choose from the drop-down list. I will be setting up the ICS controller's Pi Repeater 2X board. If you're building your own hardware or are using hardware not directly supported by OpenRepeater, then you will need to choose the manual configuration option and enter the appropriate values. Choose Continue when ready. Lastly, you'll be prompted to verify the information that you have chosen. If this is correct, click Save Configuration, then Finish and log out. Once you log back in, you'll be presented with the full web user interface where you can make further changes to your configuration. At this point, you can connect the radios to the controller. This step will vary widely depending on your specific setup, so this is only intended as a general example. You will need to consult any documentation or schematics for your chosen interface and radios. Proceed with caution and be careful not to miswire anything. A basic understanding of electronics is a must. For my example, I'm connecting the Motorola GR1225 70cm test repeater. This is set to low power, and I already have an interface cable made up and the repeater pre-programmed to use the appropriate trigger pins. In my case, I have an extra long lead for bench testing. My lead is also shielded to prevent RF from getting back into the audio and control lines. For my example, it's as simple as plugging in the control line from the repeater to the controller and powering on the repeater. In your case, you will likely need to spend more time making the appropriate connections, setting up any software settings if required by your radios, and adjusting audio levels to your interface. Using another radio that is properly set up for your frequency split, key the repeater and check to make sure that it comes back and that is identifying properly. You can also send a star key. This should play the online message and identify. If this works, it will indicate that the RX audio is also working and set at an appropriate level to decode DTMF commands.
November 3, Mike Bravo Hotel Repeater.
That's it. You have successfully set up your OpenRepeater controller. Congratulations. And for a few final notes, if you plan to make the controller publicly accessible on the internet or even a larger local network, be sure to take the time to properly secure the controller. I won't go into specifics, but 2 items that should be done is to change the default password for the UI as well as changing the default root password. Be sure to check our knowledge base on OpenRepeater.com for specifics on how to do so. Again, thanks for your interest and support of the OpenRepeater project. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. You can also follow the project on other social platforms. Also, consider making a donation to help support the project. Any amount is helpful and goes to helping pay hosting costs for the website and large download files, as well as hardware used in testing and development. Thanks, happy repeating, and 73 for now.